Go ahead and go ahead.
Rock the baby, said Mary. Rock it yourself, said John. Half of it's yours, said Mary. The other half's yours, said John. The rest of the story I promised not to tell. For Mary, she rocked her half, and John let his half yell. Still sits the schoolhouse by the road, like a ragged beggar sunning. Around it still the sumac grove, and blackberry vines are running. Within the master's desk and seat, deep scars from raps official, battered seats and warping floors and jackknife-carved initials. Charcoal frescoes on the wall, hidden talent on display, where muddy feet come dragging in when storming out to play. Imperialistic old geezer was quite the overbearing autocrat. At the tribes of earth dissembled, and the rest of them all trembled when this ancient Kaiser Wilhelm came to bat. For he never hit a single, but Babe Ruth with every bingle, and he cracked the Roman nuts with quite a vim. But in spite of all his glory and his warlike deeds so gory, they stuck the sharp old jazz bow into him. Now I would rather have been a dweller in a humble city flat than to have been old Julius Caesar. I am free to tell you that. Henry VIII would never tarry when he saw a chance to marry, and he had a lot of very charming wives. But each had her resignation written out for presentation, and she hoped she'd get out with her life. For old Henry VIII was fickle, and he wouldn't give a nickel for a wife when once she took the wedding ring. When he met with some new flapper, his old wife, he'd quickly scrap her, and there'd be another wedding for the king. Now, could Henry VIII do that in our village? I don't think, because this modern alimony would have put him on the blink. Then red-headed Cleo ruled him down along the Nile and fooled him, and Mark Antony betrayed his Roman trust. When Ivan did the Trotsky under Russia did Whatnotsky, and Nappy marched for Moscow for a bust. There's a lot of molly coddles with not much within their noodles keep on telling us the old times were the best. We may not be as romantic, and our manner may be rude, but we have it on the ancients, and we have it on them good.
The bear. Oh, Elmer, the bear. This is good.
Can you get him?
The story is Betty and the Bear. Into a pioneer's cabin out west, so they say, a great grizzly bear trotted one day, and seated himself on the hearth and began to lap the contents of a 2-gallon pan of milk and potatoes, an excellent meal, and was looking about for what else he could steal. Now the lord of the mansion awoke from his sleep, and hearing a racket, he ventured to peep just out in the kitchen to see what was there, and was scared to behold his great grizzly bear. He screamed in alarm to his slumbering frau, "There's a bear in the kitchen, as big as a cow." She says, "A what?" He says, "A bear." Well, she says, "Murder him then." "Oh, I will, my brave Betty, if you first venture in." So Betty leaped up, and the poker she seized, while her man shut the door, and he guessed it, he squeezed. Well, Betty, she rained on brewing her blows, first on his forehead and then on his nose. Her man through the keyhole kept shouting within, "Well done, my brave Betty, now poke him again." So with rapping and poking, poor Betty alone, at last lay Sir Bruin as dead as a stone. Now when the old man saw the bear was no more, he ventured to poke his nose in through the door, and there lay the grizzly stretched out on the floor. Then off to the neighbors he hastened to tell what wonderful things that morning befell, and published a marvelous story afar, how he and his Betty had slaughtered a bear. I had a girl that called me Dad, but she was 12, almost 13 when I married her mother.
Nice. And you worked at the fish hatchery?
No.
Or where did you work in?
At that time I was living in Astoria. I went there in 1940.
Wow. What was it like during World War II?
Well, it was a busy place. They just built that Tongue Point. They were building Tongue Point Naval Station, and it was under construction at that time. But I can remember I worked a graveyard shift. I'd go out and stand on the dock just at daylight, and we were right on the Columbia River, and look out across, and here come that old flying boat right down just above the water, going out on patrol out across the bar. When the Japs hit Pearl Harbor, why, they come through with the idea that we should black out the place. So we had to cover all the windows with whatever we could find. Do that. And the air raid warden used to come to the plant and check around if he ever saw my flashlight. He raised hob about that. And finally they got so, what must have been pretty near a year, we could have I think it was a half-inch square in each headlight just to mark your car so that if we could see each other. We couldn't see the drive-by or anything of that kind. We had to go what we could with what we knew about the road or what we was doing, but the other cars coming to meet you while you could see each other by those little bitty lights. The thing I remember now that I recited here was Wink 'em and blink 'em and nod one night, sailed off in a wooden shoe, sailed on a river of pure delight into a sea of dew. Now wink 'em and blink 'em were two little eyes, and nod was one little head. The ship they sailed to slumberland was their own wee trundle bed. King David and King Solomon lived very merry lives, with very many sweethearts and very many wives. And when old age came over them with very many qualms, King Solomon wrote the Proverbs, King David wrote the Psalms.